Welcome to the Troubled Artist Podcast, Episode 2, Pete Berwick.
Well, welcome back to the Troubled Artist Podcast. Thank you again for tuning in. And today I am here with actor and musician Pete Berwick. So for those that don't know, Pete has had a very long, extensive career in acting and in music, and we're going to go into all of that. And I also have had the privilege of working with you, Pete, back in 2022 on a short film called Individuality. Again, thank you so much for being a part of that project. We'll get into that as well, and many other shorts and music that you've done. So I just want to first start off by asking this one question. Tell us, who is Pete Berwick?
Well, I'll start where you just left off. Last I worked with you was in 2022 in Individuality, Caesar, and I haven't heard from you since. So, no, I'm just kidding. Good to see you, by the way. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah,
and congratulations on, I guess I'm the second guest, right? We're still in the embryo stage.
You are the second guest. Mm-hmm.
And congratulations. I truly enjoyed your first episode with Josh Groslin was his last name.
Boschel.
Well, I was close. Boschel. I got the first name right.
You got the first name right.
Anyway,
good,
yeah.
Yes.
Who was Pete Berwick? Oh my God, that's a trick question. Yeah, it's funny that you should ask me that. Actually, I have the answer to that. This, you could call it a shameless plug, or you might not, but you can. I would prefer if you can. So I wrote this book last year. It's like the diary. It's an autobiography, but it's almost 900 pages of the diary I never kept. It's called My Life in Show Business. I Ain't Him. My Life in Show Business, Whoever I Am. So to answer your question, I'm still searching. It's like, and by the way, you can get this at Amazon, and it's like a phone book, and it's a little pricey. I wish I could sell it for cheaper, but Amazon won't let me because, with the mailing and printing costs and everything, they got to charge what they do. But I would suggest it for any aspiring artists because, yeah, it just says, Caesar, I've been in all fields of entertainment, stand-up comedy. I was on America's Got Talent 2 times, and there's a story there that I'd like to get to later about never say die. You never know what one thing will lead to another. I've been in bands. I've toured all around with my bands all over the country, signed to a record deal in Nashville in the 90s. I put out albums. I've been as a professional clown for 20 years. And I started my own business booking clowns, mostly myself. I would work with other clowns. And then I also incorporated singing telegrams. I was an Elvis impersonator. I was a Johnny Cash. I fronted 2 Johnny Cash bands. The last one, COVID, kind of put an end to that. I've written 6 books. My autobiography here, a biography on the Chicago music scene in the 70s, and then I also wrote 4 novels. So I consider myself consummate, and I also get constipated sometimes too. I think the two go hand in hand together. But yeah, so I mean, as far as what defines me, that's why I titled this I Ain't Him, My Life in Show Business, Whoever I Am. I feel like at 67 years of age, I'm still running from who and what I am. And I remember being in my crib. I really do. Most people don't remember being in their crib, but I literally remember being in my crib, 2, 3, I don't know how old are you when your mom finally throws you in a bed and says, hey, get out of that crib. Those things are for babies. But I remember being in my crib and entertaining to the walls. I always imagine it. There's an invisible audience behind the wall that I was performing to. Then when I go in my backyard as I got older, I'd be playing catch with myself, throwing the baseball in the air, catching it, running around, doing the kind of things that kids did back then before the internet.
Right,
and actually
I remember,
do things in the real world. And that's a discussion for artists and how to refine themselves. But anyway, and so I would always bring my imaginary audience out there. And they'd watch me running around, climbing trees, and they'd be cheering me on. And I would walk around the house and outside going, and my mother was thinking of taking me to a shrink psychiatrist because she thought, what the hell is wrong with my 8-year-old kid? He's walking around going, does he have a tick? I don't know if there's what we called it back then. Today maybe they'd call it some name a disease after me. I don't know. But what it was I had this like amplifier in my head. And it wasn't until later on that, oh yeah, Marshall amplifiers, you plug them in, you turn them up real loud, they go really, and it was punk rock. So that when I was 8, so it was like 1966. So we had the Beatles, but they weren't doing that kind of music. They were doing "She Loves You," yeah, 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 woo, woo, woo. I was going stick a needle in my arm, you know. Of course, then when I first saw the Ramones, I saw them live in Chicago at a theater, Ivanhoe Theater, which burned down ever since. $2 cover charge. Place was half empty. A friend was really encouraged me to go see this band because I was so of course this wasn't when I was 8. That's when I was later on, like
Right.
19, I think it was. Yeah. Anyway, so then that changed my life. I thought, okay, this band stole the sound I had in my head, always had in my head. That's punk rock. So that was it. I grew up. I knew show business was my calling for the moment in my crib, from the moment I can remember being in my crib.
I believe, like your mother, was she very like encouraging of your like career?
Are you kidding? Well, yeah, I wish I could show you. She passed away last January. She's 99. So
yeah, I heard about that. I'm sorry for
you. It's okay, man. How, 99 years old. It's not like it was a tragedy, And she left behind, gosh, 9 grandchildren and kids and great grandchildren. So, but yeah, I have her trophy sitting over here. She was in community theater in the 60s, and she won 4. They call them Llama Awards for theater. I guess that was like her local theater's equation of an Oscar, and she won 4 Llama Awards. And I would go see her plays, and I was just like, oh my God. I mean, she didn't just steal the show. She totally crushed every play I remember seeing her in. And then she also forced me to take piano lessons from kindergarten through junior high. And one of my biggest regrets in life is quitting piano lessons. So by the time I was in junior high, I think today we call it middle school, but 7th grade, I was 12 years old. No, maybe 11. It's 12. Okay. And my mom said, I'm tired of forcing you to take piano lessons. She would teach me, and then sometimes she'd drive me to some other music teacher because she couldn't handle me anymore. And these teachers are strict. I remember one lady, I think she was German, and to this day, I think I remember her sitting there with a ruler in her hand, but it might be a hallucination, a flashback hallucination. I think that I'm just equating that with her being really strict,
Right.
You made a mistake, I you. But anyway, and so my mom said, I'm not going to force you anymore. You're 12, you're 11 now, you're almost a young man. Do you want to keep taking lessons? You don't have to. And I quit. I want to go play outside, go chase my girlfriend. I want to hang out with my girlfriends in the neighborhood. And it was a big mistake because at that point in my life, I was good. I could play waltzes, classical music. I could sight read real good. I could open a piece of music and just sight read. Man, it's like, I don't even know. You show me musical notes now, it's like geometry. I can't. So I've always. So then after that, I went to the Bob Dylan School of Music. In other words, just strumming real primitively, blowing the harmonica. But that's what I was destined for. I was destined for rock and roll, and I've got a really long, colorful, wild ride of a music history behind me. And
I mean, I did want to go into that music. Like you could probably discuss just highlights of that because I know again you've had such a extensive career with that. Because I am curious to know, since I know like the actor side of you, I haven't really got a chance to learn more about the music side of you. So could you maybe discuss some of like the ups and downs with that?
Yeah, music and acting very similar as far as ups and downs. I don't know which one is tougher. But yeah, so I always, I was going to be a cartoonist as I was discussing earlier. I was good. I got some cartoons published in like various magazines and whatnot. It didn't pay much. They sent me a check for like $50, but when you're in the 70s, that was big money. But anyway, so I was going to be a cartoonist. I was always drawing cartoons, and I'd gotten pretty good. My parents thought I was nuts, and I also, they thought I had a voice for broadcasting, voice for radio. Maybe that was their nice way of telling me the camera doesn't want to see your face. I tell people when I was a kid, trick-or-treaters would give me candy. When I would go trick-or-treating, the people would give me candy. But anyway, so yeah, and so I decided to take a crazy pill and start a rock and roll band. So I was living in Florida, Central Florida at the time. And I hated high school. Junior year in high school, I just wanted to run away. I hated it. And fortunately, somehow, I don't know if my parents or myself, but I discovered that I could get my senior year credit by going to a vocational school and studying commercial art. So, they had air conditioning, heating repair, auto mechanics, and then the commercial art class. And I was like, man, great. I can go in there and just draw cartoons all day. And oh man, I immediately started butting heads with my teacher because he's like, you can't just come here and draw cartoons. This is commercial art. And stupid me, it's 16 years of age. I didn't realize commercial art it's not outside the line stuff. It was inside the line. Now you got AI, you got the computer, but back then you had to use compasses and rulers. It was like drafting class. Like back then when you use a compass. And so my parents went back to Illinois. I wanted to stay in Florida. And so they wouldn't let me stay with this friend in the neighborhood. He was a little older than the rest of us. They didn't trust the guy. And so she left me with her hairdresser, which was a big mistake. I felt like an intruder. We didn't get along. They were going through a divorce. I didn't get along with their son, and so I basically ran away. I wouldn't call it running away. I just said, I'm not going to stay with these people. I don't want to go back to Illinois. I like it here in Florida. I got some good friends. I got a girlfriend. I like swimming with alligators, And so I was basically living semi-homeless in an orange field, Central Florida. This is Lake Wales. Semi-homeless. I would go back to their house when I knew they were all at work. I'd make a bunch of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, grab a couple of apples, and just leave. Enough food to maybe stay alive. I was washing dishes for like $90 a week, and I'm living in my station wagon. And I made a really so I would say my first foray into music was trying to put together this band. And a drummer and myself. And I met this drummer in commercial art class, and we would go. So down the hall, there was like a locker room, shower room, where I guess the auto mechanics guys and they're so greasy. And we didn't need it after commercial art class with our little rulers and compasses, but they go in there and shower. So we'd go in the shower, me and the drummer, and he had his drumsticks. And the acoustics were it was like we were plugged into amplifiers, the acoustics were. So with my little beater acoustic guitar, it sounded like a Marshall stack, sounded like a stack of, and we'd be in there jamming. And our commercial art teacher would find us. He'd come in and he'd just stand there face palming, get back. It's like he was so cool with us. Some other teacher would have just kicked us out of class. So anyway, and that fell apart. That band never took off, but that was my foray into music. And then when I came back to Illinois, I put together a punk band called the Generics, and we had a good following going. So this was like 76 to 8. And then I put band to band. I put several bands together after that. Got married to some Mexican army brat from Dallas. And I don't think I was in love. I think I was in lust. We were both young and stupid. It shouldn't have counted. We should have never gotten married, but we did. Moved to Dallas with her. She wanted to go back to Dallas. And I came home from work one day to a swinging door. I thought she'd been kidnapped. And I put in a missing persons for it. Turned out she just bailed on an old boyfriend. I think when I pulled into the parking lot apartment, they just ran out. They saw me coming. They knew I probably would have killed him. I think at the time it was legal to kill a man in Texas. Well, I think you had to catch him in bed with your wife, but that's something I didn't stick around to see. So I flew back to Illinois. And long story short, I met my real soulmate, Denise, in 87, and we've been together 36 years ever since. I don't know what I'd be without her. I saw you communicating I think here on Instagram, trying to explain the title of your show. And some people had trouble with it. It's not positive. Man, I got it right away. It's like, yes, this is not sunshine and roses. I'm 67 years old, and even though I don't have to work, because yes, I've saved my money, I've made some good choices in life, and even though I've been critically acclaimed, I've won 10 Best Acting Awards, my albums, 13 albums, and I've lost count of the songs that I've had placed in movies, on television shows, reality shows. I've I've been an acclaimed writer. I've had success with at least a couple of my books. I had a bestseller on Amazon for a month. And I mean, all the things I've done, I've been on all the network television programs. I've done a lot. And if there's any inspiration I could be to young aspiring artists, and everyone's young and aspiring compared to me, I'm a dinosaur. But I didn't want to come on your show today and come off all jaded, like this curmudgeon, like, yeah, I've seen it all, and just work hard, and if you don't make it, it's because you didn't try hard enough. Well, I'll tell you this: I've done everything that I learned needed to be done. I moved to Nashville, in 1990. Got signed to a small record label right there in the heart of Nashville, where all the business dealings are going on. So I'm down there in Nashville, and I'm living on the farm, 7 acres. I'm already getting bored out of my brain. I'm thinking I'm too old to just live in Mayberry. I know this is peaceful. I can hear the coyotes howling at night. I've never heard such quiet, but I'm too young for this. So then so my wife picked up this local paper, and in the back it said, looking for magicians, entertainers, clowns to entertain at kid birthday parties. My wife said, why don't you try this? I said, that's crazy. I don't want to do that. She said, well, you're working at the car wash for $5 an hour. You think? I said, well, that's degrading. I go, she's like, working at the car wash, is it? I said, okay. I went to work for this company, and they trained us to be clowns for birthday parties. And so I'm only making $5 an hour at the time. They're paying like $25 to $35 an hour. And so one day, I think this is my first week at doing it, I had entertained at a company picnic, dressed up as a clown, painted the face and all that. And I'm doing simple face painting, making balloon animals for the kids. They taught us all that. Little magic show. The staple of doing a clowning show, which later on I expounded on and really turned it into a magnificent show. So when I came back to Illinois, I got in high demand because I really was just blowing away the clown competition. Sounds funny talking about it. My life is surreal. That's why I had to write this book, because I don't believe it. I had to put it in print so I'd take these walks going, man, my life, no one would believe it. No one would believe my life if I hadn't lived it as proof. I don't even think I believe it. So that's why I wrote this book. So anyway, and they told us, and there's a lesson here somewhere. If there's any inspiration I could be to anyone who's struggling and thinks like, I can't do it, too much competition or whatever. This company I was working for in Nashville, they're called Clowns Unlimited. They said to us, and we'd have these weekly trading meetings where we met in the back room of a restaurant. They would say, you can't make a living at this. What they were really saying, the subtext, as we talk about in filmmaking, the subtext of what they were saying is, don't even think of going out on your own. We own you. Don't even think of making a living. This is a part-time job. You got to have a real job. This is not a part-time job. And then one day after doing a picnic, that company picnic I started talking about, corporations, that's where the big money was. I had a $750 check for me. But so I just made for 2 hours doing this picnic, $70, $80, and I got to turn in this check for $750? Okay, I suck at math. The little light bulb went off in my head going, my own business, strike out on my own. I can't make a living with this. I'm sorry, but $750 for 2 hours of work? Not only was that good money in the 90s, that's good money today if I don't say so myself. That's good money for a week of work. So long story short, I said, screw you to you. Denise and I were ready to move back to Illinois anyway, and I started my own company, Big Top Entertainment, and I was the primary entertainer. And I no internet then. Man, I was booking 200 to 300 parties, events a year just by stuffing mailboxes, putting flyers up in grocery stores. Back then they had these cork bulletin boards where you could leave your business cards. It just took off. There was this one magazine called Chicago Parent. That's all I needed, Chicago Parent. And that's where everyone in Northern Illinois looked when they wanted a clown or a magician or someone to entertain the kids for at least an hour or two. The mom could run upstairs, take a Valium. They'd have me for it. In some ways, it was a babysitting job. So down there, I'm going from, doing a party for these guys for $25 an hour. I'm charging $100 out of the gate. And this was 96 when I came back. So eventually, I peaked out around 165 to 200 an hour for a 1 hour birthday party. And I'm doing 6 to 8 parties on a Saturday, 3 on a Sunday. During the week, I'm doing like daycares and then singing telegrams. So do the math. And I did this for 20 years. And throughout it, I would do music. I'd put bands together. I usually ended up firing all of my bands because they just didn't have the work ethic I had. They were holding me back. So I'd make $150 for my music gigs, but that'd be like a 3-4 hour night. And I'm making more than that doing a 1 hour birthday. Hell, a singing telegram. When someone would hire me like to do Elvis, well, it was one for the money. I did them good. I put on the jumpsuit and everything. Of course, I shaved for that. I clean up good. I would make like $150 for 5 minutes. It's like I'm basically getting paid to drive to where I'm going. I'd run in, sing a couple Elvis songs, give them a balloon. They loved it. So we done my first album, Ain't No Train, out of Nashville, and I placed my first song in a major motion picture, the thing called Love. And that was the last movie that River Phoenix was in before he dropped dead outside the Viper Room, Johnny Depp's Viper Room in Los Angeles. As luck would have it, besides River Phoenix dying, which was a damn shame, the movie bombed. They pulled it out of the theater, tentpole release as we call them now. And I guess we got to call it a tentpole release because that differentiates from streaming. There's either streaming or tentpole. Anyway, and so that was good. I got $5,000 for that, which is the most money I'd ever seen in my life. And that helped finance the album because the reality of being signed to a small independent label is they're low on funds, just like the artists. And if you can meet in the middle, you can maybe take it to the next level. And that's what led to a lot of our legal disputes. And I'll just leave it at that. But so at the time, I found this agent who was booking actors. She got me work. She got me work in country music videos and as an extra. And there's a couple where they bumped me up so the cameras, not just seeing the back of my head. And that was so inspiring. I thought, hey, I can do this thing. And then one day she's like, I got some extra work for you, but you might have to quit your job, or I hope you have a boss who's open-minded, because this is like 2 months of extra work. And I thought, I work at the car wash. If I die, they're not going to even notice it because it was such a blow-off job. It was great. It was a perfect job for that because you could leave and come back months later. They'd be like, hey, Pete, how you doing? There's a towel. There's your towel. Get back to work. So I went to work on this set as an extra. It was a prison movie. It was called Against the Wall, based on the Attica, upstate New York, a prison called Attica. No, it was in Attica. And there was a prison uprising in the 70s. The star was Michael something. I can't remember his last name, some Irish name, but he was like this soap opera guy. He's the lead guy. He plays the lead guy. He's a rookie. And the supporting role was by this not yet really famous actor named Samuel L. Jackson. Oh. Yeah, if you or any of your listeners are aware of him. And I didn't know who the hell he was. Now, some of the guys on set really seemed to know who this guy was because they're sucking up to him and asking him, hey, man, tell us more about like when you were with Oprah on her show. And I'm like, okay. We're sitting around at the craft services. He's talking. We're drinking coffee. And I didn't really get to know him, but we exchanged some niceties and whatnot. This movie was directed by, he's a legendary director, John Frankenheimer, the guy that directed The Birdman of Alcatraz with Burt Lancaster, The Manchurian Candidate with Frank Sinatra, and tons of movies. So he comes into this area where some of us extras are stationed. There were hundreds on this. I don't know where the rest were on this morning. We're all drinking our coffee, eating our bagels. He says, I need someone to die today. I need someone to die. But you're off. That's it. If you die, you're obviously off. You're done. Nobody raised their hand. They all need the money. I did too. But I see an opportunity within an opportunity, I always say. My hand went right up. Okay. But you're done. Yeah, cool. Because right away, I didn't think, oh, I got to go back to the car wash. I thought, camera in my face,
Right, yeah.
So next thing I know, I'm on set with Samuel L. Jackson. I'm outside his prison cell. We're huddling around, and here's the scene. Jackson's going to get a cavity search, and I'm outside his scene getting shanked, because I'm a snitch. So that was a great job. And then I did some other work, but I never was like, how I became later, where it's like, yeah, this could go somewhere. I just did acting work to get out of the car wash and to eat donuts and coffee, and the craft services was the best part of it to me, because a lot of it was extra work, so you didn't do shit anyway. And so, and you make $75, like to do one of these country music videos, And these were like for big stars: Travis Tritt, Kentucky Hunters, Patty Loveless. And these probably aren't names people recognize now, but in Vince Gill in the 90s, these were the stars. These were the people who were on the charts. And you get $75 to do nothing. Just like, okay, walk over there. Here's a hammer. Pretend you're hammering, And that was great. That was big time back then for me. I'm trying to, if there's one theme I want to leave behind in this wonderful podcast of yours, is synchronicity. My story, and I've lived long enough now, and I'm going to do a lot more. Everything connects. I don't really look at like a fragment here and a fragment there. Everything from the moment in my crib where I knew what I was going to do. You got to take risks. You got to follow the muse, man. I want to make this clear. It's something I forgot along this part of my journey, as we are at this point in time in your show, is that I was working every crappy, grungy day job you could imagine. I was washing windows. I was cleaning toilets. I was mopping floors. I was painting. I was driving cabs, loading trucks. Sometimes in show business, I'll be on set with people are miserable. I hate it, or I'll be on the road. I stopped going on the road a few years ago, because being on the road, everyone, when I was young, you think about being on the road, with my band or a solo or even acting jobs. You think, oh, this is great, man. But I'd be sleeping in my car. I'd be brushing my teeth in gas station bathrooms, And, there's nothing attractive about, you're brushing your teeth in some grungy truck stop bathroom where the sinks haven't been cleaned since Roosevelt was president, I hope that would be inspiration to young people watching your show. Don't think, and I talk to some of these people, all on set or wherever I go in my travels. They'll be like, yeah, I'm 35 now, and I'm over they're talking like they're over the hill, and I haven't made it yet or whatever. No. There's stories of people. We all know about Kentucky Fried Chicken. We all know KFC, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, he's just one example. Colonel Sanders was 60 years old, living in his car, driving around trying to sell his chicken recipe, getting doors slammed in his face, sleeping in his car. Long story short, in his 60s, he finally sold his chicken recipe, and with some help, they started the KFC franchise. And there's many other stories of people like him. So anyway, we moved back, and I got the clowning business going. We had our daughter, Faith. My wife, Caesar, was 44, and she's pregnant. 44. That's freaking old. And we had put her off. We had put off having a kid, because in Nashville, I was on the road a lot. I was really busy, and I was really tied up with things. And so let's name her Faith. Because we're thinking of Old Testament, Bible names like Sarah, Rebecca, that sort of thing. I don't know, Faith, because you're pregnant. You got to have faith. And then the phone would ring the next day. Yeah, I saw you at my neighbor's birthday party. You were great. You even made the adults laugh, which I did. And they'd hire me, and it just snowballed. But anyway, so I want to make a point here. This is going to lead up to 20 years after this moment I'm talking about, and being on ABC's America's Got Talent. So I started doing singing telegrams, and I was a natural for Elvis, and I did the nerd, and I got the chicken suit, and the gorilla suit, and I never enjoyed doing those. Cause I would try to talk people out of it. Yeah, I want you to come and do the gorilla or the chicken. Well, those are the generic standards, and I would try to talk them out of that. And I enjoyed doing Elvis much better. Or let me do the nerd. The nerd was fun because you could mess with people's heads. They would hire me to come into a bar or restaurant as a nerd. And I created this character called Francis Furburger. I put on the glasses, and I pull my pants on real high, like this. And I'd be like, hi, I'm Francis Furburger. I've always been a character actor. That's why. And don't ever define yourself. You can be whatever you want to be. And I'd be messing with them like, yeah, it's your birthday. Can I buy you a drink? And I'd be like hitting on them, and the girlfriend, and they're all dying. All her friends are just dying. And then, of course, eventually it wouldn't take them long to catch on that she's being pranked. She's being punked, Oh man, and then here you go. Here's your 150. They might buy me a drink, which I usually turn it down because I'd be on my way to do another show. and I'd say that for when I got home. I needed a couple when I got home because I would be out doing 5 or 6 kid parties starting at 10 in the morning. Don't ask me how I did it, but I did. No GPS. I used like this map book. And then I'd go meet my band at some bar, or if I'm playing solo, I'd have my guitar in the back. Then I'd be getting on. I'd be like Clark Kent and Superman. I'd be driving. Don't do this at home. I'd be like taking off my Elvis suit or my clown suit, and then just slipping in my jeans and t-shirt, and then I'd be lugging my equipment into some bar playing till 2 in the morning. Oh my God! So anyway, I wanted to create my own singing telegram character, kind of based on the Nerd, but I called him
Tony Baloney.
Tony Baloney. You can see he's kind of nerdish, and he's kind of based on the old comics I grew up with. Tony Baloney was after the one line, like Rodney Dangerfield. You know it?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I was thinking Rodney Dangerfield.
I went to see my doctor. I went to see my doctor. I said, Doc, I want a vasectomy. He said, with my face, I don't need one. My wife came to the door the other day wearing a see-through nightgown. Problem was, she was going out. At my age, I couldn't even see through her nightgown. That kind of thing. Just really bam, 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 bam. So if they don't laugh at one, so what? You're on to the next one. They forgot they didn't laugh at that one. But anyway, it took off. It took off really well, and I enjoyed doing it so much. I would talk them out. Don't do the chicken. Don't do the gorilla. Let me tell you about this Tony Baloney guy. That suit, look at that suit. I got that out of my dad's closet. So I'll speed ahead to like around 2010. I was on this local cable show, Comcast. It was called Psychobabble. And the guy hosting the show had seen me perform in a bar. He liked my album, Ain't No Train Out of Nashville, I was telling you about, that they got in the River Phoenix movie. And he's like, man, I like you, and you tell funny jokes in between and everything. Why don't you come on my show? So I came on his show as a musician a couple times. That went well. And then one time he said, just come on and do Tony Baloney. I like Tony Baloney. So I did Tony Baloney. And it was kind of like, it was a late night setup with the couch and the desk, And I just killed. I just like took over the show with my jokes and humor. And long story short was I sent it to AGT, and Tony Baloney either love him or hate him. But I created him. He was the kind of guy that back then we called it getting the hook. The old days, literally, Caesar, they would literally do that in vaudeville. And I'm kind of a student of vaudeville. America's Got Talent, they replaced the hook with the buzzer.
Right.
And believe me, you do feel that. And they warned us about it. So she calls me. She's like, yeah, I think you're really funny. And she wanted to know, are you making a living doing this? I think what she was looking for was like, yeah, is this guy really like touring, doing the zanies and doing the circuit? Is this Tony Baloney guy? I think she wanted to hear, okay, is there chicken wire? Because they got to be throwing, if not tomatoes and heads of lettuce, they're certainly throwing bar stools at you, if not the table they're sitting at, because man, see, they're always looking for the sacrificial lamb on America's Got Talent. They have the cute little kids doing it. They're like, oh, we love you. They got to send them through. They have to. And then along comes Tony Baloney. It's like, okay, get out the harpoons. So I never heard from her. A couple years went by. That's okay. And then I get an email from another casting director. And I guess she had sent on my clip, or I can't remember, John Piramini. And he's the guy who I send a theoretical Christmas card every winter, because if not for him, I wouldn't have gotten back into acting, which I had left behind in Nashville. I was never serious about it. We could tell by now, I had so much other things go. And so he's like, yeah, Pete, you know what? I'm going to do my best to get you on the show. And I'm just thinking like, yeah, okay, whatever. You're not going to get let down again. But the weeks went by, and a month or two, and I realized that the last taping was like, they only had like 2 tapings left. I knew the schedule. They start in late March, and the tapings go to like the first week or 2 into April, and that's it. And then the season starts in September. And I'm emailing John Piramini. I'm like, John, what's going on? I said, yeah, I'm working on it, Pete, but I'm getting a little blowback, nothing. And then I emailed him again. I said, John, I love you, man, but I watched the show. I see you guys fly people out there to jump over lawn furniture, they're playing the kazoo with their belly button. Come on, Tony Baloney belongs on your show. That's why you reached out. I'm really just, and sometimes it was kind of like email or yelling at people. And I've done it before and I found it works. And desperation doesn't get you anywhere. and I know for both sides, because I worked on both sides. I booked acts. I've been a producer, director. I've had people come to me wanting me to help them. And when they come off looking really desperate or wanting an easy answer, they want me to wave a magic wand, I'm turned off. But anyway, so I'm like, come on, John. He's like, okay. So it's like a Thursday night. It's midnight. It's 10 o'clock in LA, right? The phone ring, my cell phone rings. Hello? I can't remember if I was drinking that. Pete, it's John. Hey, what's Tony Baloney doing sleeping? You should be out chasing hookers, right? Yeah. So, yeah, John, I went to see a hooker the other night. I lowered my pants. She lowered her price. Sorry, Caesar, this isn't a kid episode anymore. He goes, can you be on a plane by Sunday? I got an airplane ticket with your name. I go, yeah, I can do that. Oh, man, what an experience. And I'll tell you, so I'm backstage with John, and he's following me around. And I notice every entertainer back there has their own casting director, like in their shadow. And like, I'm going to get a drink. Where are you going, Peter? I go, I got to get some. I'll get it for you. I thought there's a reason why, because they don't want you getting so stage fright. And I'll tell you, Caesar, I've done it all. And I said to John, John, I would be really BSing you now if I told you that I wasn't just scared to death. I wasn't out there for a minute that my mouth was like the Sahara Desert. And it's big. It's a big theater. It's like 2,000 to 3,000 seater. It's mostly millennials and young people, and which is fine. I didn't even think that at the time, because my character was very 60s and 70s. And a lot of his jokes were not exactly PC, you know what I mean? I love my wife's cooking. It's fit for a king. Here, king. So I come out there. What happened was I had Simon in tears. And my very first joke was, so Simon's like, tell us who you are. Tell us who you are. That's the moment where you introduce your act. This is what I'm going to do. Blah, 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 blah. And then I go stand on my little X. So Simon said, tell us what you're going to do. No, tell us who you are. I said, my name's Tony Baloney. Stand-up comic. I have to stand up. My hemorrhoids are killing me. I thought that's the one they didn't cut it. And the young people went nuts. Nothing but laughs. They loved it. And then the rest, dude, I can't remember. It was a blur. But a couple more laughs. And then before you knew it, and they warned us about that buzzer. They said, just so you know, we've had acts where they heard that buzzer and they stopped, keep going. And they were right, because I felt that thing, dude, from the bottom of my feet to the top of my head. And forget how it felt in my crotch. I mean, it was just like, I jumped. And if you look at the clip, you literally see me suspended. And then shortly after, I thought, oh my God, I'm dying, as they say in comedy. Dying. It wasn't tomatoes in the face, it was, and then shortly after that, so Mel B comes back, and she walks right over to Simon's area, and I can see her hand coming down on his buzzer. He grabs her wrists, because once all 4 buzzers go off, that's the hook. They kill the mic. Yeah. God bless him. And that was a win-win for me. All victory meant Simon. And so all the judges were like, no, Howie, man, no, that's not comedy. That's just Rodney Dangerfield. And I'm staying in character. I don't know no Rodney Dangerfield. And then Simon's like, Tony, it's a yes. It would have been a yes for me, because you're annoyingly funny. And I'm like, dude, I love you. And he was right. He got it. That's what this character was supposed to be, annoyingly funny. And so later on, I was talking to the sound guy there. And this guy was like, dude, you had me in stitches because you forget you're mic'd. God knows what they were hearing when you're taking a leak or whatever. They got you mic'd. So wherever you went backstage, from room to room. And he's like, dude, you had me in because I was talking to the other I was in character. Wherever I went, I was like, I got to make people laugh. I got to be informed when I take the big stage. And so what the sound guy said, if you go in Simon's home in the Hollywood Hills there, I think he lived in Beverly Hills. He said, if you go in there, he's got all these old black and white photos of the Marx Brothers, the Rat Pack, George Burns, everything I was inspired. No wonder he got it. The moral of the story is I created Tony Baloney in 98. And in 2017, that character ended up on America's Got Talent. And again, just last year. They called me back last year. So they said, we want you back. I go, okay, I'm there. But we want you to incorporate props this time. I'm like, oh God, there they want props. That's clown stuff. A stand-up comic doesn't do props. That's a clown. So I didn't want to screw that deal up. I didn't want to fight with them. So I said, okay, that'll work. I would like to have my act back. I know what I would have done different, but I won't go on it. So sure enough, this time, Simon was the first one that buzzed me off when I started doing my silly little props. And some were actually props I use in my kids shows. But I thought it'll work because Tony Belen, I'm telling my one-liners in between. And Simon was like, Tony, I still like you, but it's just not working tonight. And then Howie and Heidi were even more brutal to me this time. I can't remember what Sophia said. Howie's like, that's not comedy. I'm like, I didn't expect you to like it. I leave the stage. I got the hell out of there. I knew where I was going. And it was like 1 a.m, and Pasadena's a ghost town at 1 a.m. I'm mildly hungover. Fine. I've been there. They gave us a free breakfast at the Sheraton, which is there's like this area, very nice spread. And I got my Uber driver's going to be there like in half an hour. So there's this guy, slovenly looking guy, heavy set guy. Nobody's giving him any mind. He looks like he just walked out his shift at the gas station, whatever, and he's helping. And I sits down. Nobody's talking to this guy. And I sat down. Yeah, mind if I join you? Yeah, okay. And I didn't have much time, but I go, what do you do? What do you do? He's like, I'm a singer. And I thought, oh, another singer. Good luck with that. But I didn't condescend him or patronize him. So I'm chatting this guy up. He's like, here, listen to this. I'm going to sing the song by Journey called Can't Stop Believing. And listen to this. I go, okay, yeah, that's Steve Perry, but where are you? He goes, that's me. I go, dude, are you kidding me? And he said, look, it's already got over 1 million views. He's a janitor at Terre Haute High School. You know the story.
I remember. I know. Yeah. You're the
Richard.
What was it? Richard. Yeah. And because I remember you posted about it on Facebook that, you were talking with him, and then lo and behold, he won.
Richard Goodall.
Won the whole thing.
Richard Goodall. So, yeah.
That was him. Wow. That's crazy.
And this is the thing. I've just one of many times I've been ahead of the curve. And he said, look, he showed me like 1.5 million views. Steve Perry had weighed in on this. There's like a video of him singing to the kids. The kids at the high school called him Mr. Richard. And he's singing to the kids at some assembly. And I handed his phone back to him. I'm looking at this guy. I'm saying, you know what? I believe you're going to go all the way. This country needs a hero. The economy's bad. People just feeling hopeless and helpless, especially in the arts. And I said, I see no reason why you couldn't take this whole thing. I really honestly believe that. And I didn't just say that to make the guy feel good. I had this feeling like this guy's going to freaking take it. The look is perfect because he doesn't look like a rock star. If he was all rock star, the Goldilocks hair, the leather pants, he would have just been another rock star singing Steve Perry. And here in Illinois, we got a couple of journey bands that kill, man. But to me, he was the whole package. And his anti-rock star look was what made that package. And so my Uber came and we parted ways. And here's a killer too. My manager would always tell me, this is a business of relationships. Understand that, Pete. Because he would butt heads more than me. This is a business of relationships. Otherwise, it's who you know, right? But not just who you know, but how are you going to nurture that relationship? And how are you going to be civil and kind and not burn bridges? And believe me, I've burned my share because I can be a hard ass, and I may never learn. My wife's lectured me on that countless times. No one knows me better than her. I would hang up the phone. She'd be like, you did it again. I'd be like, what? I'd be like, what? She'd be like, you didn't hear yourself screaming at that person? What? They didn't do what I told them. Anyway. So my Uber came, I drove away. And I had handed my business card to every person. I'm old-fashioned like that. I still have business cards made. On the back, my IMDb, my Facebook, my website. And I'll hand people a business card. They'll scan it with their phone, then hand it back to me and say, you know what? They give me 1,000 of these things for $10. Could you just get it off my hands? What am I going to do with it? I just scan it. Okay. So I gave everyone, camera people, but especially the other, and I was there for like 2 days. You're there for 2 days, rehearsals and everything. People are coming and going, acts from all over the world. And Richard Goodall was the only person that connected with me online. He connected with me on Facebook. No one else did. Not a one. And I spent much more time. There were other people backstage. When I went there, Caesar, I didn't really have any. I knew I was going to get buzzed again. I knew I was going to be the sacrificial lamb. My wife's much more optimistic than I. Well, you might actually go through. I said, no, you don't understand. I didn't create this character to be successful. He gets the hook, but that's the fun of it. So I was really mentoring some of these other. I said, because I've been there before, and they were, picking my brain. Well, what happens in this and that? And I felt like, then I ran into Simon backstage and we had a conversation that really threw me off my game. Nothing to do with him. He was as kind as could be, but it threw me off my game. because what happened was my casting director came up to me shortly before my taping, and they said, Pete, just so you know, when you go out there, whatever you do, don't say, hey, it's good to be back. Good to see you. You know, act like you've never been here before. We don't want everyone to think that we have everyone back, because then they're going to be maybe bugging us. Well, they have their reasons. I understand it. This is ABC, right? So I ran into Simon backstage, and he's like, I go, yep, Tony Belong. He remembered. I couldn't believe it. He remembered me after 7 years.
Wow. Yeah.
How did you forget that suit, right? And we're having a nice, and I said, Simon, just so you know, I wanted to relate to him what they told me, but he's the man, right? Okay. I said, they told me when I come out to just pretend I've never been here. But he said, yeah, forget what do whatever you want. So that's the first thing he did when I came out. I said, Tony, tell us what happened last time you were on. And I wasn't prepared for that. I was going to go right into my hemorrhoids are killing me. My wife's cooking, blah, 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 you know, the thing I did. And I got out of character. And what I did, though, was a good thing. I started praising the crew. I'm a behind the scenes guy, because the AGT staff and crew, they are just so wonderful. They are so accommodating and respectful, especially an old fart like me. You know, when you're getting old, when people start calling you sir and holding the door open for you. You know, you want to use a wheelchair ramp? We have it repaired or whatever. And and Richard Goodall did the same thing once too. He went into that. I can't say he got that from me, because we didn't see each other's taping. And he was praising the crew, and he's right. And especially us old guys. And he's just behind me a few years. He's up there. He's in his 50s. And as you get older, you know, you start appreciating civility much more, because that's something that some people have forgotten. And it never goes out of style. And I went out of character, but Simon kept interrupting me. And Sophia's like, yeah, well, okay, well, just get on with your act. And I'm like, they cut me off. They stopped me short. I'm mentioning my casting director for 2017. I mentioned my casting director that got me on just then. And I was just going to this big spiel about these people need to be and they didn't want to hear it. And Simon kept talking over me and just threw me off my game. And, but should I resent that? Maybe not. Maybe that was meant to be. More behind the scene people need to be. That's why it irks me to this day when people walk out of movie theaters during the credits. And I don't care if I'm streaming, and I hate when Netflix and now Amazon copy them. They want to just dump you onto the net. It's all numbers for them and time spent.
Yeah.
You know, the credits are rolling. I said, to keep watching credits, jump through all these hoops. Now, I think Amazon made it a little easier. You had to go left a couple times, then up. Now, I think you just click down, watch credits. It should be the other way around. If you don't want to watch credits, do these 2 steps. It's disgusting. They don't want you to watch the credits. You know, they want you to assume that, you know, this thing was picked off a tree. Forget about this army of people that work to present this magnificent piece. You know, forget that there were like literally 50 stunt artists who worked on this thing. Just pretend that Tom Cruise jumped off the mountain, which he does in some cases. You know, I used the wrong name there. But I want to go back to 2017. I got ahead of myself, as I always do. That's what got me back into acting, because I had done some small bit roles in between, but I was so busy with the clowning and my rock projects, my albums, everything else, and sleeping in my car on the road, and it was just nuts. I didn't have any room on my plate for that stuff. But, by 2017, I was really burnt out in the clowning. And I told myself, you know, I'm approaching 60, you know, I'm in my late 50s by then. I don't want to be Creepy the Clown, you know. I knew some clowns who were 80 years old and they were still doing birthday parties. I thought, well, that's just sad. You know, I don't want to be that guy. I've already made enough money to almost retire, but I think I had. But, you know, I'm a workaholic, and still I want to work. That's why, you know, I'm kind of in between. I'm at one of these points in my life now where I can't get arrested. And maybe after this podcast, I'll go and rob a bank to put an end to that. Anyway, so long before I ever had any inkling that I'd be a professional clown, and that's how I would be able to retire one day if I wanted to. I hate the word retirement. That to me just means you're waiting in the waiting room of death. But I would have this vision would come to me that I would be in a living room with my little suitcase open on a stand, entertaining little kids. This was years later. Isn't that weird? But God works in mysterious ways, does he not? And so I'm flying back from LA. I thought, this could work. I said, this thing could work. What is Tony Baloney, but not a character? I guess I'm a character actor. I've done some acting in Nashville. I did some bit parts in between, but just because I happen to have the time to do it in between all the other things I had on my plate. I'm going to, and at the time, I kind of was trying to make some forays back into the business, but it had changed now, right? It wasn't the 90s in Nashville anymore. It was the internet age. So I came back and I'm sitting at home and I'm looking at my library, which you can't see. I got libraries in every room of the book. I'm a book collector, a voracious reader. I always have been ever since I was a little kid. And I saw this book. It's called Acting. Acting is Everything. Very dated, because she still talks about mailing out VHS tapes, And does anyone even have headshots made anymore on glossy 8x10s? I'm going for my first in-person audition next week. I can't think of the last time I did that. I mean, that was starting to, Zoom and Skype and everything was starting to come into play anyway. And then COVID really expedited that. Now, if I get an actual in the flesh audition, all I think about is, oh God, how much gas is that going to take? It's all made us a little lazy, I think. And I always think in person is better. So I started reading this book, and it really stimulated me to go back and 8 years after that, 9 years after that, I've been going nonstop. It wasn't until last year around the holidays, which is normal, that things just really stalled out. I've been through rough patches before. I know that. This soon shall pass. It always does. But you never get used to it. And so what I would tell anyone in this business, especially if you're starting out, just follow your dream and don't give up and believe in yourself. Nothing in the world likes and these little emojis, a little smiley face with a heart, and all your phony fake 2000 fake book friends or whatnot telling you congratulations or you got this. That's all empty calorie stuff, man, because they're not going to bat. You are. They're not lying in bed at night full of anxiety and depression because you feel like, because your family and everyone else is telling you, keep dreaming. You got to believe in yourself day and night, every day. We're really acting every moment. Even when we're dreaming, we're acting. I mean, this sounds a little deep, but we're always processing our thoughts and our lives. I think we're all connected in emotional ways, and there's like this I don't know what you call it, like this invisible ray that's looking for a home. Maybe in reincarnation they believe you die and then you might come back in another life as someone else, or maybe as a worm. But maybe what happens to your muse? Does it go to the stars with you, or is it homeless? And maybe this muse stops and hey, hello, and you ignore that muse or that ray, whatever you want to call it. And that's it. We have to stay open to possibilities. And I think, I don't want to come off sounding old-fashioned here, but I think we spend too much time online and pretending we're something we're not, and looking for this false disingenuous confidence and encouragement from people who really don't care if we make it or not, or much less live or die.
You tell it as it is, and I really thank you for doing that. I do want to highlight just some of the films that I recently saw that you were a part of, specifically the short film that I saw called Locksmith. I know it just released a few days ago on Amuleto on YouTube, and again, I'll put a link in the description for people to also check it out. But yeah, I just wanted to say that you did such a great job on that, and the way that the character, because it does, I'll try not to spoil it, but it does.
I don't care.
Well, just for people who want to check it out, but the idea that it kind of subverts expectations, this idea of you think it's going to go one way,
don't judge,
then it goes in a different direction, and it actually kind of reminded me of when we did Individuality.
Yes.
There's that character of Arthur that when you first see him, he's this neighbor. And he seems
and Caesar, I want to say, working with you was such a pleasure. And I remember going over my character with you, and this is what impressed me so much with you as a director. And because I don't always know, I try to arrive, and so often I arrive through my experience. I fleshed out my character, and I so often find that the directors won't even give me direction because I got it nailed. I know what they want, and but I wasn't sure with Arthur. I remember talking to you, and I'm sure you recall saying, what's with this guy? Do you want me to play him creepy so to make the audience really think like, yeah, he's he's the bad guy or whatever? And I remember having these conversations with you. And it was a challenge for me playing Arthur because I get comfortable. I get comfortable because I tend to play the scumbag bad guy roles a lot, So I'm actually playing an angel, and it wasn't necessarily an angel. I remember asking you, was this guy an angel or what is it? It's like, you were kind of like, he might be, might not be. You're leaving it kind of no-ended, which I understand is part of the art. Well, how many times do we watch a movie where we're going, what was that all about? And no, so it was great. And I loved, and congratulations on that too. I enjoyed the screening we had there in the Loop and meeting your family and everything. And it was just wonderful. But I only saw it that one time. It's not enough. I want to see it more because I remember you had all kinds of ethereal cosmic things going on. And it was a beautiful, deep movie. I definitely stop teasing me. I want to see it again. And that YouTube, I never knew about Amuletto. Did you know about Amuletto?
Yeah, I've heard about them. They had a whole bunch of other short films. It's a great one. There's a lot of great short films.
I couldn't believe it. So Locksmith, when you just put a short film on, and I've done this with some of the projects I've co-directed, they kind of die a slow death on YouTube. You might come back a year later, they got 150 views, but Locksmith had like 10,000 views after like 2 days. Now I think it's up to 15,000. So it's obviously got a good following, whatever you want to call it.
There's this other film that I saw. It was on Tubi. There's several projects I saw on Tubi. One of them was Fanatic. That I saw, really good, where you played like the sort of police detective. Yeah. There was another one called Degree of Difficulty.
Right.
I was also on Tubi with Tori Delaney. I know you worked with her, and I actually,
I worked with her a lot. Tori and I, Chicago, as you know, you worked with her too.
Yeah, I worked with her on my last short film.
Okay, yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, Chicago's it's a big city, but it's a small city as far as the film community. I rarely work on a project where I don't know. So I haven't worked with someone before, whether it's cast or crew. It's and it's wonderful. And it is a community. It's a family. It makes you feel you're not alone in this. I don't know how LA kind of has a joke. LA's got this joke where it's like, yeah, you don't really mourn your, like if a fellow actor friend of yours dies, you don't mourn them. You piss on their grave. I'm sorry. That's the joke. That's the joke. I didn't make that up. They're horrible. They're brutal. And it's like, I see it here too. I've seen it in the music business. I think a big mistake, actors, artists, envy is a terrible thing. And what are you envious of? You're envy because your his friend or somebody got the part and you didn't. There's that's a horrible way to be. If there's any number, look, I get rejected. Probably, I'm 67. I've been doing this a long time. And I've got my connections and I've got my gift of gab and my confidence. I can go out today and get 3 jobs if I want to go back into the regular job market. I don't take no for an answer. I've been around the block. I didn't have the confidence I had when I was a youngster in my 20s, even early 30s. I let people step on me. But it took that. It took getting bullied. And that's a whole other subject. I got bullied, man. I wasn't a big guy. I'm not big now. I'm 5'8", but I've done some boxing and I can hold my own. I'm pretty tough, but I have my fragility. I get down and depressed and anxiety like anyone else. We didn't call it anxiety back then. We just called it, being stressed out. But I'm not on medication. I just try to deal with things. But I have anger issues. I know 2 emotions, anger and rage. And the thing is, us actors, most likely, I think we get rejected 99.9% of the time. And not getting every role you submit through your pitch sheets for, whether it's backstage or actor access, whatever anyone's using. And some are better than others. I'm not going to go into how I see some of these online sites really digressing. A lot of them are going for not so much, they're going for actors, I say that in quotations, who have big online followings, and don't even get me started on these UGC, user-generated content creators. I'm sorry, those aren't actors. Acting is not uploading yourself talking about a erectile dysfunction pill or hemorrhoid cream, and I don't care what it takes. Okay, if I needed the money, if I was in danger of losing my home or something, I might be online doing this crap. But that's not acting, it's garbage, and it's giving real commercial actors. I've worked in commercials, and that's good work if you get it. I make more money working commercials than where my heart is in.
Mhm.
But yeah, so anyway, so not getting every audition is nature's way of reminding you that you can't be everywhere at one time. My gosh, if I got even 10% of my auditions and work I just submit for, they never get back. They'll never get back to most of these online submissions. In the old days, there wasn't such a thing as submitting. You got the call, like in Nashville, my agent would call me. There was no email, of course, and you'd show up on set. And it was insane. We have it so easy now because you can phone it in. You can like do take after take after take. And my wife films me. She reads with me. And sometimes it's like, I think that's good. I'll be a little lazy, no, I don't want to do any more takes because sometimes the first take is the best, but often it isn't. Often I find the third take on set as well. The third take seems to be the best one, which makes sense. The first two were rehearsals, but back in the day, you show up and in the room, and they'd hand you the script, and 5 minutes later, Pete Berwick, oh my God, I didn't even have time to read my lines, much less I don't know what, and you go in there and so you don't have a backstory when you get the signs online either, but you've got days, maybe weeks to live with it, and you can process it, and the subtext speaks to you, and you kind of get to know the you don't know where this character's been. Has he come from a bar? And then I go into my lines because the before is so important. We forget that as actors. Don't just like, okay, when the director says action. No. That's not when you start. You start before action. What's my motive here, as they say? Am I leaving a bar? Am I going through a divorce? Is it raining outside? And I'm coming on a set here. Do I have a coat? Do I throw the coat on a coat hanger, or do I keep it around my shoulder because I'm going out? There's little nuances that I find they work so well. And even if no one else knows, I'm glad I did that because that was a much more artistic thing to do with my hands than just have them hanging at my side. And that's a whole nother side of acting besides your lines. What to do with your hands. I've learned of mistakes that I've made. You can wave your hands around too much. And I've seen some work where it's like, I wish I could have that back because what am I doing? Waving my hand in front of my face. And of course, I thought the camera was over there, but no, it's over here. And nobody told me that. And especially in Hollywood, they're going to tell you, but in an independent film, it was a low budget. You can't expect the director to hold your hand and know everything that's going on. He or she has a lot going on. You've got to come prepared, and you got to be your own director. That's why the best advice I could give, and I continue to do this, is don't just study the art and the business of acting. Study the other side. Study what the crew does. Where are they going to be? Talk to the lighting guy or woman. I make a point of like shaking everyone's hand, getting to know, especially the DOP, the director of photography, very important. But they're all important. Doesn't matter if you got the best DP in the world. If the lighting guy doesn't know what they're doing, the film's not going to look. I get to know all of them. And I'll talk to them throughout. It makes them feel special. Not that that's my point, but I'll ask the lighting person if I stand over here, will I be out of your light, and things like that. And I think they do appreciate that. And it's not just for them, it's for the greater good of the entire project. And I've had people tell me, and I take that as a compliment, but then again, I don't feel smug about it because I say, you stole the film. I've been told there's this one fellow actor I've worked with. He says, man, you steal every film you're in. I don't want to steal. I want the film to steal. I want everyone. I want the whole, because it doesn't matter how good I am or anyone. If I'm like come off as the next Marlon Brando, but the lighting is not good and the sound is a bad quality and the film just doesn't look good. It doesn't have a high level of standard to where it's going to go far in the film festival circuit. What good does it do me? Hey, look at this film I'm in that looks like crap. I'm really good, but the rest of it, It's no good. It's no good. Nobody wins. I don't win. So I'm rooting for the team. That's why leave your envy at home. I run into attitudes on set, especially with young actors. They've maybe done 2 or 3 things. They've got maybe like 3 credits on IMDb. I've got over 100, and they're ready for somebody to hand them the keys to their home in the Hollywood Hills. You know, they're coming off. You see them online, and they're acting like a star. I see through it all. I would say we got to get back to the real world. We got to get back to the real world. Don't fall for the illusion of Facebook. You know, I was locked out of my Facebook account like 2 weeks ago. Facebook had a malfunction, and somehow I've been locked out ever since. And I don't care. I don't care. It's like I find it doesn't affect me at all, and not being able to get back in doesn't affect me at all. It doesn't affect me at all. As a matter of fact, I feel really good about it. One less distraction. I could go forever. I love talking show business, Caesar. I love your podcast. I love what you're doing. God bless you for doing this. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. But I remember, too, I always talk to myself, and I still do. And I think when I was younger, I would just constantly be talking to myself, answering myself. Now, whether or not that's a sign of insanity or not, I don't know. I have yet to have my house equipped with padded rooms, but I just find, and maybe that's healthy, maybe it's not. Now, I know in the books I've read, in my travels, and the people I've talked to, they'll say, well, have other hobbies and interests. Don't be consumed by this. Well, I will tell you this. My work is my life. But there's nasty people in show business. It was no different with all the day jobs I had. Your work is only as pleasant as the people you have to work with, I worked in miserable, unheated, filthy, rat-infested warehouses where I pushed a broom and stocked shelves all day, where I didn't have to deal with anybody. I was the only one there. But yet, if there was one person there who was an a-hole, who had an attitude, or they couldn't stand me, it made everything miserable. I was much happier with the rats. You know what, Caesar, where this really hit me, where I was going through this phase was at your screening for individuality. And I remember talking to Omar.
Yeah, the producer, executive producer, Omar.
I remember talking to him about that. And I remember it was a wonderful screaming because screaming, I do my share of that. But I remember, though, there were some opening segments, music, and there was like some Oprah-style talk thing going on stage. And I somewhere the conversation on stage came up about giving back. And I was really going through that at the time. I'm at a point now where what good am I if I don't give back what I've learned? Now, of course, my advice isn't necessarily up to date, obviously. A lot of my advice is pre-internet, and I use the internet as a tool. I'd be an idiot not to. So whether anyone takes my advice or not, that's their prerogative, and I wouldn't necessarily advise them to, because we're in a different time now. And if you're starting out now, it's obviously different than when I was starting out back then. But I find that I really am eager to give back things I've learned, the knowledge I do have, and maybe I could save somebody some years off their life. But I don't know. I don't know how relevant my advice is, or even I am. It's something as a dad. I remember when my daughter, she was still living at home. She wanted a guitar, so I gave her one. I had plenty of them lying around the house. I didn't have to buy one. And I said, okay, Faith, I restrung it because I'm a lefty, and I restrung as a righty. I said, okay, Faith, whenever you're ready, I'll give you lessons. She's like, oh, that's okay, Dad. I'll learn on YouTube.
I mean,
that's a part of me, like the Simpsons, like Homer Simpson. Part of me is like, but then the other part is like, okay, well, I'll just go to the bar then. So it's great. The internet is a time saver. It's wonderful. I employ it like everyone else, but I do feel it's as an artist, and your show is about artists, and it's gotta. Look, flesh and blood is so important. We're heading into A&I land now. AI land, artificial intelligence. That's something I see it, and I see the garbage. It's been popping up on Facebook. I'm seeing this garbage popping up on LinkedIn. These young whatever. Oh, look at what I just created. It's like, it all looks the same. It's AI. And the comments are agreeing with me. I guess LinkedIn, you're going to find older people. And they're like, yeah, nice connect the dots. That's what it is. I look at these people creating this AI animation. Well, that's been going on long, but eventually it's in film now. You can make these real. You don't even know if they're real people or not, and that's where we're going to be heading. And it's dangerous because you can take anyone, whether it's a celebrity or you or I, or any of your listeners or viewers out there, and they can put you in a compromising position. I guess, what do you call it now? There's a word for that. It's just not good. I don't like where it's going. I don't think you should be able to take an actor who's in their senior years now and knock 30 years off their face so they look like Harrison Ford in Raiders of the Lost Ark again when he was young. I don't want, let's all age gracefully in our art. I swear, I don't even think about that. I have no aspirations or desires to be made how I looked in the 80s again so I can be a leading man. No, I'm not a leading man. I'm almost 70. They don't want to see some old guy up there, especially with a beautiful leading woman who's in her 30s. That's kind of creepy. I'll be glad to take the support role of the old burnt out cop, detective, or the bad guy, the creep or whatever. I found my niche. I'm good at that. I don't even make an effort for leading roles because most leading roles are the younger person. They want the next Tom Cruise. And I carry the weight of a lot of the films I've been as a lead support role. And there's a lot of glory in that. There's a lot of glory of the lead, not even having the lead support role, just having, I've had some of my favorite work is work where I've just had a couple lines and I've lost track of the stuff. I've got a lot of work out there, and I've got about. I know you were going to ask me about things I have in the works, and I've actually lost count because the wheels are slow. The wheels are slow in this business. You could do a film that might not be out for 5 years. I had that happen recently. I've got like 20 projects that I've got about. I think I've got somewhere between 8 and a dozen projects that I'm hoping are going to drop this year. And I think it's going to keep me busy at premieres and promoting on my end. My recent feature last summer, I was Frank Sinatra.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Now there's a story.
I wanted to talk about that.
There's a story to that. I'll try to keep it short. That's hard for me. It's called Before Dallas, and it's about President Kennedy, Frank Sinatra, Sam Giancana, the mob guy, head of the outfit, the Chicago mob back then. I think the outfit might still be around. And Marilyn Monroe, and that triangle per se, and how it all head up to the JFK being elected. Now, it's not about his assassination. It's before Dallas. And what happened was, a year before Dallas, there was an assassination attempt planned at the Blackstone Theater in the Loop on Michigan Avenue. Beautiful hotel, the Blackstone Hotel. I said theater, I'm sorry. Blackstone Hotel. I actually auditioned for the film. It's based on a novel that was actually written 20 years ago called Princess and Thieves. Vito Brancato directs. He wrote the novel. And he had me audition as a gangster in the movie. And the gangster I auditioned for was a real-life gangster. I can't remember his name. His nickname was like the Big Fish or something. And so I'm watching a video footage online of this guy. This guy's like big, tall. He's like 6'5". I'm 5'8". And I'm glad when he wrote me, he said, you know what, why don't you, I'm going to have you audition for this guy now, a Cuban gangster. And for this role, I might had to unleash some Cuban dialect, but I'm good at that. I played a Russian mobster. I played English characters. And then I did. And he wrote back, he said, yeah, you did that good too. He said, your talents are obvious to me with both these auditions. I'm going to use you. Let me get back to you. I said, okay. I thought, I might hear back from him again. I might not, but I thought he was sincere. And then he writes back. He said, how'd you like to read for Frank Sinatra? And I thought, I actually, instead of like going, oh God, that's the lead role. That's a big role in the film. It was all about him and Marilyn Monroe and JFK. And I said, really? I didn't think, I could do Elvis good. I could do Johnny Cash good. But Frank, he's hard to sing. He's harder than it looks. And he's like, Frank really isn't going to sing in this movie. I can. I did pull off some singing, but Sinatra, emulating him is tough. I'm good at characters. Doing Elvis, that's why there's so many Elvis impersonators. He's not that hard to do. It's really not that hard to go, oh, it's all right, mama, it's all right, And I'm a baritone anyway. Sinatra, when you listen to him, you know why it's hard to do Sinatra? Just like I said a little while ago, the best acting is not acting. He wasn't singing, man. He was bleeding. His heart was bleeding those words, man. It was where he was coming from, and I haven't been there, and he's tough to emulate. So I read for it, and I got the role. And I tell you, man, I haven't seen the movie. I'm a little on the edge of my seat. And I know now why some of these actors will say, well, I never watched my movie, especially these Hollywood actors, which I can't relate to. I think they're lying. I think they're bragging. You got to watch your work because, well, if you're not going to watch your movie when it's done, why should anyone else watch it? How are you going to grow as an entertainer? And I've grown by watching my work. By going, oh gosh, why was I doing that with my hands there? Or why? No, I wish I had that back. And next time I'm going to make sure I don't make those mistakes. And they call them beginner mistakes. Well, I still make them, man. I don't care how long. I've been doing everything for a long time. I'll leave it at this, and then I'll let you wind down your show, begin editing this mess. If that's what you choose to do. I've heard this too many times. A lot of these acting books, I want to strangle the casting directors, especially. I think a lot of these casting directors are failed actors who just they want to be the gatekeeper. They want to continue to be the gatekeeper and think that their advice is great. And you got to do this. Stop saying to young artists that I have books, entire chapters like, when is it time to quit? Okay, so you moved to LA. Maybe you've been there 5 years and things just aren't working for you. Maybe it's time to start rethinking this thing, or so much is based on, okay, I've been in LA so long now, or I've been wherever. I'm not famous yet. And I went through this all my life. And I'm sure there's probably still family members that think I'm nuts, but don't look now. But I don't have to get out of bed in the morning if I don't want to. I don't have to chase the money. But I'm almost 70. If you saved your money, invested wisely, and not make too many drastic mistakes. But the sad thing is almost half of Americans have $1,000 or less to their name. Everybody's complaining about inflation. I'm so tired of hearing about the price of eggs. My God, eggs? Have you looked at the price of a car or a house lately? Eggs are the least of my problem. Eggs are expensive. Here's an idea. Eat something else. Quit giving the advice of when is a good time to quit. That's the last chapter in one of my many libraries. I have a whole library of books on the business and art of acting. When is the best time to quit? You know when? I'll tell you when you're dead. That is, if you are truly an artist. Now, I understand at the same time, I'm not going to encourage people to do this, put all your eggs in one basket, and then just live and die with that basket. Because, it's not for everybody. And there's no security, there's no health benefits. It's really, you almost have to be insane. Like I said, you have to swallow that crazy pill like I did when I was in my crib at 3 years old. I don't know. I can't. Everyone has to make their own choice. I think it's probably healthier to take on the arts as a hobby. I mean, if you have a job, especially if you have a family, you got to support your family. I have no respect for a man that leaves his wife and kid. So I will close out by saying, never say never. Just never say never. And I get it. We have our doubts. I'll look at an audition. I'll look at the character breakdown, the synopsis of the whole project, and I'll think, nah, I don't want to go there. And a lot of it is because I don't have to. I don't need the money. Or I don't want to invest my time in this project because I really don't believe in the story and I don't like the character. If I really worked long and hard enough, would I be able to character act my way into this character who I don't feel embodies me and I don't embody him? Yes. But I have the freedom now at this point in my life to where I'll just stay home with my wife, or I'll just go to the bar, or I'll just go take one of my long 8-mile hikes. I take these long, ridiculously long hikes in the summertime. I'll walk 10 miles. I just take these long hikes. And then I'll wind up at some bar, and after 3 drafts, I'll call the wife and say, you got to pick me up because I'm not walking home. I feel too good now.
Thank you for tuning in to the Troubled Artists podcast. Have a great day.